We'll move on to reports from government agencies, starting with Lena, please.
Thank you.
Supervisor's office.
Thanks. So I have a couple things. One is, I don't know if Sheena's here, but we're planning to probably have the presentation to the public on the scoping project in El Granada on June 28th, which I think is a Tuesday at 7. So just want to put a hold on your calendars for that. Not for sure confirmed, but that's the date we're looking at.
Sorry to interrupt. I spoke with Sheena today, and it's going to be 6 p.m. on the 28th, 6 to 7:30.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So just keep that, time open because I'm sure we want to be at that. We've been having some Juneteenth webinars. We had our first one yesterday and it was really a good dialogue, but we actually had like 2 participants. So I just want to shout out that we're having these Juneteenth webinars. The next one is on the 14th about local perspectives on housing. And then the next one will be on the 21st with perspective on education. And the last one will be on the 28th about Black leadership, creativity, resilience, and looking into the future. And I will put a link to the website that has all that information and the times for those. At the board meeting on Tuesday, we will have the item to ratify a farm worker commission come before the board. I'm not going to get into the details of what that's going to look like, but in short, basically, it's going to be a commission that's actually built around having the participation of farm workers. So if anyone wants more information about that, I'm more than happy to chat about it. And in the same vein, just because I thought, you guys are a wealth of knowledge, 2 things that I'm kind of just doing some research on right now and don't have any actions for yet are composting and maybe opportunities to have a larger composting site, maybe at Ox Mountain, maybe somewhere else, but just composting for the county somewhere. So if anyone's interested in composting, I'd love to chat with them and hear their opinions. And then the other thing is, handling this fentanyl crisis we're seeing. So that's another thing I'm doing some research on. So if anyone wants to just chat about it or has any information they want to share with me, I'd love to hear it. I don't have a COVID update right now, but I will say the numbers are very, very high. So, keep doing your safety precautions. And if you're eligible for the second booster, I would recommend that you go and get that. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Any questions for Lena? Sid.
Sorry, Lena, I could be, maybe I just missed it, but did the housing thing for the homeless count, the 1-day point in time count, ever get published and put in the to the Board of Supervisors, or are they still holding off? I saw something on the housing website, but I haven't seen those numbers rolled out anywhere. Are you aware? Did they get rolled out and I just missed it?
Let me double check because I was just looking at the old numbers and the website. So let me see if they're on there and I'll put the link to the old ones. And if the new ones are published, they'll be there.
I think it said that they counted and things went up. There's more people that are housed, but there's also more people that are unhoused. And I just wondered if last time they had a nice colorful brochure and on the front, it looked a lot like Greg, the guy standing on the front, but one of the counters. But then I haven't seen anything like that. This was just like a little 2-page black and white printed up letter.
Yeah. So we had a really good presentation. We've been having presentations with our Ending Homelessness program. So we have a video of that in the PowerPoint. So I'll share those in the chat too.
Okay, maybe they could put it on the MCC website. We have a large bunch here on the coast side, as you probably know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll just put some stuff in the chat. If you have more questions, Sid, let's touch base.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lena. Harvey Robert from Heffern Bay.
Hi. I think the homeless count was published in the review recently. I remember reading, I believe it there. So the numbers are out. They're not encouraging, but no. What we live in. I have a couple of other items. At the city council meeting last night, we learned that the city is applying for a grant, and we're pretty hopeful that we're going to get it for the East Side Trail from Spindrift Road to Frenchman's Creek. And that would include a pedestrian bridge over the creek and the study of a roundabout that would replace the signal at Frenchman's Creek, which has been a lot of controversy about it. That light is not consistent with Caltrans requirements for a signal on a highway. It's a source of a lot of traffic congestion, and if and I'm a believer in roundabouts, it could take place. That would be a very useful way to get along Highway 1. The other thing that you probably do know is that we have a new sheriff in town. Christina Corpus won almost definitely the election yesterday. So she will be replacing Sheriff Bolanos. I think she takes her office starts at the beginning of 2023. But the city of Half Moon Bay has to negotiate a contract with the sheriff's office, and that will probably change how we go about doing that. That's all I got. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Sid, you have a question for Harvey.
Yes, I do. Harvey, on the point of the police contract, I remember when they originally were going to put in the 52-room hotel, and Don Horsley said if there was issues that started arising, that he would make sure that they had more enforcement. I remember him saying that. Of course, you know, you never can be sure to hold a politician's feet to the fire, but when the Half Moon Bay renegotiates their budget, are they going to, I mean, their contract with the sheriffs, are they going to try to get a little more enforcement out here on, not on the Midcoast, but in Half Moon Bay proper, where it seems like most of the incidents are?
You get what you pay for.
I know.
Well, we could have as much enforcement as we were willing to pay. And
I realize.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
I guess I'm asking because there seems to be a lot of issues. I don't just mean with when you read on Nextdoor about people's garages being broken into, or their cars were stolen, or their bicycles went missing. And also, you know, the ever-present traffic gridlock issues. Will the city consider upping their budget for policing, is what I mean, based on public sense that things are going downhill?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure that things are really going downhill. And when you brought up the Coast House, as far as I'm aware, that has not added any sort of level of crime, even though a lot of people were worried when it was first instituted. So, like I said, our police budget is something like 23% of the total budget. And my guess is, but I'm not part of the negotiating team, it'll probably stay roughly constant.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, sometime next year, they're going to have Tanitas Creek Beach opening up. That's a new county park, and they'll be bringing more traffic through Half Moon Bay as well. So I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Sure.
Dan, you have a question for Harvey.
Yeah, Harvey, thanks. You may know that I've been vocal in questioning whether or not roundabouts would be a good fit for our coast side. Being that we don't have a large amount of geography for a large radius roundabout. So it would be a small radius roundabout, which would require the cars 24/7 to slow down to about 15 miles an hour or complete stop if somebody's in the roundabout. Would you support before any roundabout would be approved? Would you support giving the community the ability to see through simulated software, the actual effect of the traffic? I don't know if you're familiar with Vism software, but I was first introduced to it. Caltrans did a presentation, and they did it when they redid the bridge up there in Pacifica. They basically showed how the car movement would move with the new detour and everything. It's a simple plugging in the information of the accurate data from the accurate traffic flow and comparing it from a roundabout to the existing traffic light, or even better, maybe a upgraded smart, maybe more of a smart system that could be used, which could improve traffic. And then also the pedestrian crossing there. Also, that's another factor that would make the roundabout, impact the roundabout. So would you support, allowing the community to fully understand and fully easily see effect from alternative A and alternative B?
Let's be clear. The first thing is this is just a grant that's being applied for. We haven't received it yet. Second thing is, the application requires a study of possible traffic mitigation at Frenchman's Creek. So if this simulation software is a good thing and enables us to actually determine that it would be better for traffic and for safety, yeah, sure, I'd be in favor of that. But we're a couple of steps from that actually occurring.
Okay, thank you, Harvey. Just being proactive. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Are there any other reports from any other government agencies? If not, we'll move on to public comment. This is a chance for anyone in the public to make a comment on anything not on the agenda, up to 3 minutes. If you're interested in commenting, please raise your hand. It's under reactions. Okay, I see no public comment. I have 4 announcements. One is a reminder that there will be 4 seats on the Midcoast Community Council open for election in the fall election. People will need to declare their candidacy by sometime in August. Any of us can help you with that, or you can go directly to the elections office in San Mateo and find out how to sign up. It's easy to do. The exam on getting a permit to extended for a year.
Claire's breaking
ground
up.
was broke parallel. What? Oh,
You were breaking up. We didn't hear most of what you said.
oh, okay. Try it again real quick.
For the last 60 seconds.
Okay. The elections, we have 4 open seats. Did you get that part? Okay.
Yeah, got that.
Okay. The exemption of getting a tree permit for cutting eucalyptus and pine has been extended for the next year. The parallel trail, the ground was broken last week. It should be done the end of the summer. And this book, I'm going to plug it. It is California Field Atlas, The Coasts of California. Excellent book. If we had a community center, I would put it in the community center. So moving right along to the consent agenda, there's 4 things on the consent agenda. Are you hearing me okay? Okay. First thing is the minutes from the last meeting, which Jill did, which we are so thankful for. Second thing is recognition of Pride Month and World Oceans Day, which is today. Third thing is the resolution to continue remote meetings. And the fourth thing is a statement of policy, which is required by the Elections Board, that anybody who runs for office for the MCC and wants to place a candidate statement on the ballot has to pay for it themselves, and it can't be more than 200 words. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
I move. I second.
Okay, Dan, could you call the roll?
Sorry, Clara,
Yes.
Greg,
Aye.
Michelle,
Yes, I'll just note that my name was misspelled in several places in the minutes. So I'd like that corrected for the record, but I approve it with that change.
okay. Len's still not here. Pardon?
I was just replying to Michelle that I approved the minutes and I missed it, so I will get that fixed.
Okay. So Len's not here. Is Jill here yet?
Doesn't look like it.
I vote yes. And Dave?
Yes.
Okay, so that's five yeses and two that are not here to vote.
Okay, thank you. So it passes. So we'll move on to the regular agenda. After each presentation, I'm not going to call for clarifying questions because they too often go into discussion. If you just have absolutely no clue what the person just said, then we'll entertain that. But otherwise, we'll go directly to public comment and then go back to the council. So the first thing is a presentation from Ken. Yeah.
Can I make a request? I think it's better for the whole process that the council members get to ask questions first. Reason being is because the council members are generally more aware of the subject. And then when the public hears that, it may spark some, thought in them to ask, and then come around and finish off again with the council. So that for me, that's my preference. I think it would work best for a public meeting, but you're the chair.
Let's do it the way I just said this time and see how it goes. But we are a little restricted by the rules of order, but I'm happy to come back to it again and reconsider.
I don't think there's any restrictions in the rules, so I'll have to show that if somebody thinks there is. I don't think there is.
It's in the rules of order that we follow, Dan.
I'm sorry, Dave. Say that one more time, please.
It's in the rules of order that we follow that it be done that way, that there be public discussion prior to council discussion. And as Claire said,
prior to the vote.
No, prior to public discussion.
So it clearly states that the public discussion is first.
Yes.
Before council discussion.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll like to look at that. Okay.
Okay. First item on the agenda is a report from the Mid-Penn organization. Tyler Smith is here, and he's got an update on the Purisima Multimodal Trail Project. Tyler?
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Cool, awesome.
Yes.
All right, and I am joined by Tina Hug, and I believe she's going to kick off the presentation. Tina, do you want me to share my screen?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everyone. I don't know if you remember us, but we came in February to share our project with everybody, and we promised to come back with an update. And so that's why we're here tonight. And we're hoping to get some feedback from you all on what we're going to present tonight. We're not going to go through the entire presentation that we did in February, but we're going to give you some highlights that I think would be of interest to folks who didn't attend the February meeting. My name is Tina Hug, and I'm joined obviously by Tyler, who set up this meeting and has taken the lion's share of a lot of this coordination. He and I are both working on the Persimmon Creek Multimodal Access Study, and our work is informing the trail and parking area study that is happening under another project manager, Gretchen Lausten, who you may know from other meetings or from this meeting prior to the February meeting. But we do want to thank you for having us, and we'll get started so that we have enough time for any questions that you might have. We are going to go over what we're calling transportation demand management strategies, and these are specifically strategies that help us get people out of their cars or find different ways besides cars to get to our preserves, which, as you probably know, is very challenging given our location in the mountains. And in this instance, Persimmon Creek spans from Skyline in the mountains down to just about the beach. This area is not open yet. The project that I was just speaking about, the parking area and trailhead, is in this location, and it's going to take people up into the main preserve. It's going to take some time. It's in the planning process, and there'll be a lot of public meetings coming in relation to that project. But our work is going to help inform that project and what it becomes. Persimmon Creek is really big. It's 5,400 acres, and it's really popular. I think that for those who know it, you also know it comes with a high visitation. We get about 200,000 people per year. It's remote, so mainly people use their cars to get there. And that demand for Persimmon can really result in parking and traffic issues that can be frustrating for both our neighbors and our visitors. The purpose of our project is, again, to look at our existing conditions, our visitation, our visitors, and find ways that encourage people to use different modes of transportation to get there besides single occupant cars. We're going to look at, and we have been looking at, all of our trailheads, and the four main trailheads are here. There are two that have parking areas. We call this the North Ridge lot. We call this the Persimmon Creek lot. This is the lower lot that a lot of people are familiar with. And then we have two trailheads that have a little bit of limited roadside parking. And those offer a different experience from our main lots. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting to my mouse here. This is a close-up of those four areas that I just mentioned, the two main parking lots, North Ridge, and the lower lot, the Persimmon Creek Road lot. And then we've got our roadside parking at the Redwood Trail and the Grabtown Gulch trailhead. I'll move this project or this presentation into Tyler's purview, and he's going to go over some of the data that we've collected to date.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, we've got a few slides here to go into the data collection. This slide here depicts the vehicles that we observed parked at the preserve. And from here, you can see that this preserve has a big regional draw. We have people coming from as far away as San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties. But if you look at the peninsula, I guess in the vicinity of Midcoast area, that red indicates a greater concentration of people that are coming from these areas. So there's also a lot of people locally coming to this preserve. And when we asked whether respondents had any problems getting to the preserve or finding parking during any of their recent visits, we found that their difficulties centered around driving and parking and limited transit access, and other means of access were viewed as not readily available or safe. Next slide. We asked visitors what they thought would improve their experience getting to and enjoying the preserve. It's no surprise that their ideas centered around cars. And this is not surprising given that most people currently drive to the preserve, and adding more parking would be the simplest and most immediate solution to their most frequently reported problem. And more than half of visitors who cannot find parking end up not visiting the preserve at all. So they might go to nearby county or state park, go home, go to another Mid-Penn preserve, or just save it for a future date. And I'm gonna give this back over to Tina. She's gonna go into the transportation demands management strategies.
So our goals for all of this work is to help improve the visitor experience in one way or the other, and open up more opportunities to get people to the preserve in a more seamless manner. The parking area that is going in on the coast, the Highway 1 area, offers a potential opportunity for us to explore some of these transportation demand management strategies. These can be incorporated into existing parking lots, but they're often easier, or will be easier in a new parking area and trailhead. So we will have an effect on that project. And as we look at the Northridge lot in a future expansion opportunity, we might be able to incorporate some of these transportation demand management strategies there as well. For short, I'm going to call these TDMs because it's kind of a mouthful to say the whole thing. There are 7 categories of TDMs, and you can see their categories listed here: bicycle, visitor demand management, education, parking capacity, parking management, transit, and wayfinding. I'll go into each one of these. And as I go through these, I would ask that folks start to think about which ones appeal to you, or raise questions or concerns, or anything that you want to share with us, because we're incorporating input into our final recommendations, ultimately that go to our board. We're still early days yet, but this feedback is going to be great for our consultants as they look at all of these TDMs and develop priorities. This is the bicycling TDM, self-explanatory in some ways. It's looking at improving ways people can get to the preserve on their bike, whether it's through bike lanes, whether it's putting in additional parking, whether it's creating bike and ride parking lots somewhere else where people can group together and ride in together to the preserve. So that's strength in numbers, safety in numbers, or even creating trail connections within the preserve, or even possibly one thing that's being explored is where e-bikes may fall within the district's board's purview as to determine as to whether e-bikes are something to consider at our preserves. But certainly e-bikes can be taken to our trailheads, and we are looking at offering different infrastructure to support that type of mode of transportation. We have done some visitor surveys. We did one in last year that we mentioned, and then we had a second one running this spring. And there seems to be some interest from folks to explore the bicycle TDM strategies a little bit further. So that's optimistic for us. The next category is also self-explanatory. It's increasing our parking capacity, increasing the number of spaces we have to offer folks, whether it's the new parking area at the Highway 1 area, new parking area, or whether we take the Northridge lot and expand it a little bit by making the parking area a little more efficient with paved, it's gravel now, but making it paved and striping it so that people park more efficiently, or whether we help designate parking or no parking areas on our roadside parking areas so it's really clear to people where they can and cannot park. Some of these elements require some additional patrol and staffing for that purpose, but the focus of this TDM is to improve parking. Parking management is the active management of the parking area. So taking the parking and maybe designating areas that are for carpools or van pools and allowing people to reserve those spots so that they have guaranteed parking if they are coming in a larger group of people. So it's incentivizing people to reduce the number of cars they use, but to come in one. And we've also been exploring whether we have the capability to offer real-time parking data so that people can know before they leave the house how full the lots are, so they can make some strategic decision making before they leave. All of these require a little bit of learning from our point of view. This is not something that we normally do. So whether we are doing reservations or putting in real-time parking sensors or creating an app that allows people to take ride hail or some microtransit solution over to the parking area. A lot of these have a steep learning curve for us because it's not something that we do normally for our parking areas. But we're exploring these because we do want to help people get to the preserve in a more streamlined manner. Transit is the one that folks know mostly. It's shuttles. We are really exploring the shuttles pretty heavily because it sounds like a solution that a lot of folks support when we went out in our surveys, whether it's creating a local shuttle between our lots, whether it's from the new parking area to the lower lot, or perhaps expanding it, if it works, to a more regional solution that might take people to more places than just our preserve. Baby steps, of course, we tried to see if we can pull it off ourselves. Again, this is something that we don't know too much about in terms of our skill set. This isn't, we're an open space agency, so this is definitely something we're going to lean on our partners and transit agencies to get some guidance on this. And one of the things that we do know with regard to shuttles, the shuttles come with parking to park people to get them to the shuttles. They have to leave their cars somewhere. So how we solve the parking issue also is to be studied, whether it's in that new parking area that we've just mentioned a few times here, or we come up with some other solution. But it's an exciting solution for us to pursue. Visitor demand management, this is looking at reservation systems. It's looking at possibly paid parking. It's not something the district likes to do, doesn't do. So this would be a big deviation from what we normally do. It doesn't usually have a lot of support from our board, but this manages visitation, manages the number of vehicles that come to the preserve at peak hours, so that it's a little more metered. I think people are probably familiar with the Muir Woods reservation system that's indicated here in this photograph is in the lower right. And the national parks, state parks appear to be exploring these reservation systems more closely, because as we have experienced, the visitation has been pretty substantial to their park systems as well as we have been experiencing with our preserve system. Education and outreach, this is something that we will continue to maintain. It's using our social media and other platforms to provide our visitors with information before they leave their homes to help formulate their travel plans. And so you can see that some of these TDMs are in combination with one another. If we are able to offer real-time data using sensors in the road, we would try to find a way to present this information online so that people can get that information before they leave their homes. And the intent is to teach people or educate them on alternate modes of transportation, so that, and as we implement them, we can share that information as well. The final category is wayfinding traveler information, and this is helping, again, the visitors with travel information before they leave their homes. And this is through different means, whether it's real-time information that I mentioned before, whether it's more wayfinding that allows people, once they've reached the parking lot, can't find parking, where do they go next? I think Tyler had shown you the data that shows that people just leave. We don't want folks to just leave. They don't have to. We'd like to offer different locations for them to explore. We have noted through our surveys and our queries that people like to go to the same preserve over and over again, same trailhead, and showing them different preserves or explaining that there are many more preserves down Highway 35 was a surprise to some, and it helps to distribute visitation across other preserves that may not have as much visitation as Purisima. So that's something that we're exploring. We did run a pilot to see if any of their signage helped people out. I think that that's still a work in progress. We'll probably try some other signage pilots in the ensuing months to come. So that's it for our TDMs. Those are our 7 categories and a variety of examples of them. And we did have some questions for you, which is basically your general ideas or thoughts on the strategies you presented, and which ones might appeal to you most. Before I finish, though, I just wanted to show you where we are in the process. We're here in June. We are in the middle of engagement, which is this lightish pink, greenish line. And then we are going to be developing our findings, conclusions, prioritizations, and bringing them back to our committee and ultimately our board in a series of public meetings, which we will notify this group about, and we'll have a couple of open houses as well. So those are open houses are coming later this month. June 29th is our target. And then we'll have another open house that's in person actually, and a virtual one in July, mid-July. So that is the schedule, and our contact information is here. It's the same as before. If you want personal updates on all things happening at Purisima, we encourage you to join our email list. Not only will you get information on the project we just presented, but you'll get information on the Purisima to the Sea Trail. This is the one I kept mentioning. That's along Highway 1. Gretchen is the project manager overseeing that project with Tyler. Tyler's the common denominator, so he's helping us both. And her information is also online. And with that, I will take us back to the questions. And if you have any questions for us, we're happy to entertain those as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina and Tyler. You've helped us out by asking us questions, which hopefully people will answer for you. You've also brought up another topic that we've discussed in a different context, which is signage. We've been going on and on with Caltrans about signs they want to put in to update people about what's going on. And I think that yours are probably going to be totally different, but the general reaction to the Caltrans proposal has been negative, and be interested to see what kind of signage you are considering. But I'll save that for when the council talks. And I'll turn it to Sid Young, please.
Hi, thank you. I was just curious if you did mention on your bus plan or shuttle plan that you might partner up with some other people. You know, they are, San Mateo County Parks is building a huge revamp of the Tenitas Creek Beach. And I don't really know if Purisima's past that or before that, but with the price of gasoline now, I doubt if you're well, maybe you'll still get a lot of people who can afford to drive at $7.19 a gallon, which is what they're charging in Half Moon Bay for premium right now. But it seems like maybe this plan started a long time before the gas prices started shooting up. And do you anticipate a lot more visitors or fewer visitors, or you're just proposing this out, for years to come? That's my main concern is the fossil fuels of people getting out here to the open space. And if you can partner up with San Mateo County Parks to keep a few more cars off our roads, we already have gridlock in Half Moon Bay on weekends as it is. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the partnering, whether it's with county parks or state parks, is definitely top of mind as we move forward into implementation. We'll definitely be reaching out to our partners in that regard. And indeed, our goal for this is to try to get options out there that don't rely on cars. It's tricky because, you know, we're in the middle of open space and folks have to consolidate somewhere. We have not seen visitation go down despite the gas prices. I don't know if it's because people still want release and they still want to go out to their open space and they're willing to pay that cost. I don't have any information on that. But one of the things that we are exploring is we're at this new lot is looking at EV charging. I'm not sure what we would put in for e-bikes, but trying to look at other modes that aren't reliant on the gas powered cars. Although, you know, we understand, we're hopeful. I guess I personally hope that gas prices aren't going to stay at this level, but we're trying to balance that the demand with pushing folks to choose different modes. So giving everyone as many options as possible that allows that to be at least a choice they can make.
One other question before my time is up. Have on those parking lots you're talking about, are you going to be using pervious or impervious materials for that? Because, you know, we have no storm drainage out here on the coast, or maybe you didn't know.
I don't believe we have those details worked out yet. They're just in concept, but we'll make note of that comment. Impervious or impervious surfacing being
Thanks.
An issue. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the folks from Mid-Penn? Hearing none.
Are you going to go to the council to answer the questions?
Yes. Hearing no further public comment, I'm going to close public comment and go to the council. Michelle, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, first I'll say that my family is very active users of this area. You know, my kids love to go and we love to explore the trail and see the banana slugs. And we spend a lot of time at the Parisma Creek Trail. When COVID hit and the parking became restricted, you know, I was really concerned because a lot of times we would go and there would be no spaces. And I actually felt like we were supposed to turn around and leave because, like, you know, maybe they didn't want overcrowding at the park or something. So I'm happy to hear you say you don't want people to turn around and leave. I don't think we ever have had to. We've kind of waited it out and got a space every time, but I definitely know that parking is an issue. I like the idea, just in terms of your strategies that you listed, I really like the idea of signage directing to new trails because, like you said, you know, a lot of people can tend to go to the same trails all the time. I know we're guilty of that. And so having ideas of where else, other trailheads that we could explore would be really nice. In terms of, you know, one of the ideas was like a reservation system. I think that's going to be a little bit harder, especially for families, because a lot of times you just, you know, you try to plan something, but getting everyone out the door is really hard. And especially if you have to hit a certain time. And then for those who don't know that there's a reservation system, I think it would be really disappointing to show up, especially if there's no spots available. Public transit, I think that'll help. I mean, it's a great idea. I think, you know, for a lot of people, they may take advantage of that. Just as someone with 2 young kids, I probably wouldn't, just because of COVID concerns and just kind of, we already have a car full of people, so it'd be easier to just drive all the way there. But I really appreciate what you guys are doing because it's a really treasured space, and it's nice to know that you're trying to make it more accessible for more people. And thanks for coming to the MCC to share that.
Dan.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It's my personal preference, and I think a lot of the other people that use the trailheads, but I can't speak for them really. I'm just speaking for myself right now. Is to possibly not have too much infrastructure in the parking lot. As far as striped parking, when you take that step, then you got to follow all the standards, and then actually I think you wind up with less parking because it's been my experience with the informal parking at Graywell Cove and other places. People make it work, and they tend to fit more cars in versus a formal striped parking lot. And then on the signs, certainly, I think most people when they start look at the trailheads, there's a map. They start at the map. There should be I think there's a map there already, a main map. Start there, and then decide which trails see the mileage. It's always helpful, and the topography. And then decide which trail that they're going to go. And then as far as, when they start headed, usually there's the little 4x4 post with some very simple trailhead signs. And I'm all for all that. And I hopefully, I will say that I'm not favoring, any excessive signs, unnecessary. It just takes away from the natural feel of the experience. So I'm sure you're considering all that. I'm sure the board will also. And thank you for what you're doing. You're a great asset to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave.
Yeah, so I'm a relatively frequent user of Parissima, mostly midweek, and I've watched the parking, especially every time an article like when Tom Steensters comes out, and seeing what happens afterwards. And for those who don't know, MidPen and the county work together to add quite a bit of no parking signs and restrict the parking on the streets because CAL FIRE and others were concerned about access for emergency vehicles. So that never used to be a problem. You never saw a line of 3/8 of a mile cars along the road, but it is a far more popular place than it was. So I'm really happy to see this happening. Because I filled out the survey, I'll just try and be really brief. I would be happy to see a shuttle and use a shuttle, being one of the normally Singleton midweek users. I suspect the shuttle would be counterproductive, maybe cost-wise on midweek, but I may be wrong on that. I have seen midweek days when and I'm a new owner of an e-bike, so I may have a slightly different opinion on e-bikes than I used to. I used to be very opposed to e-bikes on trails because people were often reckless with them. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I know that the district has started allowing e-bikes on some trails, or at least is in the process of considering it. So anyway, thanks for all this process. It's a good process.
Greg.
Well, you guys made me go to the park. I grew up out here, but I had a dog until recently, and I had not been there in decades. And so it was a real revelation. First of all, I took a wrong turn before I finally figured out how to get there. So there's something about the directions to the preserve, but I figured it out. But that wasted some carbon. If you leave it confusing, that will reduce congestion, though. And then the other thing is, it was it was a long drive and it felt like I was entering another world. I didn't realize that canyon, with the farms, and it was just gorgeous. And so I actually pulled over a couple of times just to admire the view, which made an extra point. There are only a few places where you can pull out that I remember seeing and stop. And I can't imagine what that's going to be like if we fill it up with bicycle traffic as well. So maybe, I don't know what to tell you, maybe no cars and only bikes and buses. But that road seems kind of narrow for a lot of traffic. Of course, I went in the afternoon, midweek. It was not crowded. I would also say the signs when I got there, lacked clarity. I was kind of in a fog about how much further it was to get to place X. And maybe I should have taken a photo of the map down at the base, or maybe is there an app that I could download that would have the trails and would it show on my GPS? Is there enough of a GPS signal? That would have helped. It also showed me I was a little out of shape because those were longer hikes than I expected. But I thought it was a great facility. I appreciate what you're trying to do here. And I guess my major comments are that maybe bicycles make sense. If you e-bike from a central place, and that was the way you had to get there, maybe that would work with less cars. But I don't own an e-bike, so. All right, thanks for all you do.
I thought I was knocked off, but I guess I'm back. I think we're closing this at this. I hope that our comments were helpful. Your information was very helpful to us. So come back when you have more to tell us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your comments.
Thank you.
Good. We'll move on to the second item, which is another of our series of policies and procedure talks to kind of clarify some of the things we do at the MCC, and so that we're all speaking the same language. Dave, could you take that, please?
Yeah. First thing I'm going to do is stop the sharing here. So there we go. So I don't have anything to show here. I'm just going to talk. The main topic is committees, subcommittees, ad hoc, standing, advisory, all kinds of different categories of committees, and also a bit of history. So in terms of committees for elected bodies, there are two major distinctions, and there's little subsections of each of them. One is a standing committee that has either a quorum of the body on it, which in our case is 4 or more, or has less than a quorum and has a non-elected member on it. So if we had a committee, for example, on the airport, and we had 2 council members on it and a member of the public, that is then a standing committee. Or rather, it's not a standing committee, but it falls in the rules of the committee. You have to have agendas, you have to have minutes, you have to publish, and you have to make it publicly accessible. So pre-COVID and all that, it meant you had to have it in a place where people could attend. Now it means you can do Zoom. So ad hoc committees that are short-term and have less than a quorum, no agendas, no minutes, you just report back to the council, whatever. And ad hoc usually means they have a limited duration. You're working on some specific project with a duration, and when that project work is completed, then the ad hoc committee ends. There are many cases where a committee is long-standing committees, but that's a different issue. We have not had any standing committees or other committees that require minutes or agendas for many, many years on the MCC. And that's been a deliberate action. For many, many years after the MCC started, we had a planning and zoning committee, which met regularly. It did the same thing that a combination of the CDRC does now and what Jill, Claire, and I do in reviewing planning applications. But they did it as a standing committee with public meetings and minutes. And it was a really big deal. And they actually helped get the CDRC created, which took a lot of that off the hands of the MCC. And that required both ordinances and zoning changes. There have been attempts to create standing committees since then. And previous councils have resisted that. And since I've been on the council, it's come up a couple of times and I've resisted it. And we have not had one in quite a long time because of its overhead. And there's also a feeling among many past council members and probably some of the current council members that it's better to have short-term committees that have a clear end of life rather than trying to have bureaucracy that just goes on indefinitely. So that has not always been, I should say, a universal consensus. And it's been contentious at times, but that's where we have stood. So before I go on to other topics, does that raise questions for people? And Claire, do you want to do this public first also, or do you want the council to do clarifying?
If you've basically said what you're going to say on that particular topic, let's ask the public if they have anything they want to say and then throw it to the council. Okay. So does anyone in the public have anything to say about what Dave just said about committees? Okay, then we'll turn it to the council for discussion and questions. Greg?
So 2 questions / issues. These committees that can have members of the public, I'd appreciate if you go back over that. And the reason I'm raising it is that if we lose some of our most experienced MCC members, then I sure would like to have the ability to have them advise a subset of the council in the coming year or so until the new members are up to speed. So I'd like to understand how that would work and whether that requires minutes, et cetera. The other thing is something that Len sometimes has brought up, and I don't fully understand it, about under what conditions can a committee speak for the MCC? Ever? Never? We always have to craft letters and take 3 meetings and have half the people that show up never having understood what went into the letter and all the problems we have with not having staff? Or is there some way we could, deal with that? Thanks.
Okay, that's a lot of things. So if I miss some of them, remind me. So the first thing is any council member can always communicate with as many members of the public as they do on a continuing basis or an ad hoc basis or an intermittent basis. It's when it's 2 or more council members, things start to get a little iffy. It's okay for 2 council members or 3 to meet with individuals, but they have to be very wary of the Brown Act if they do that. As long as it's not a committee, then you don't fall into the Brown Act territory of needing minutes, agendas, and letting the public attend. Did that answer that part of the question? You're on mute.
Could we have some sort of advisory responsibility where like you're available to meet with a subset to go over planning and zoning review, or Len's available to help the wildfire issue research or something like that when you're gone?
I assume that's what you meant. It becomes an issue of whether it's a committee or you're just meeting with a member of the public. And if you are a committee, then you run into the committee rules. And there's some very fine lines in there. For example, we call our planning committee on the MCC, which is currently Claire, myself, and Jill, a committee. It is in fact not actually run as a committee. We probably ought to stop calling it a committee because of these Brown Act issues. So the answer is yes, but you do have to be careful.
So can I add on to your question, Greg, and maybe see if I can flesh it out a little bit? Let's say, Dave, that you're gone, and let's say that I'm still, and for some reason, let's take me out of it. Let's just leave Greg and some other unknown person. They want to talk to you like maybe every couple of weeks on things, different things each time. Would they be able to do that without formalizing it?
Absolutely. It's only when you formalize it that you start running into the Brown Act issues, or if you have more than a quorum, which clearly is a Brown Act issue.
Okay, so what about the issue about speaking for the MCC, which Len seems interested in trying to do?
So the short answer is no, not unless the MCC as a whole body of a whole authorizes that committee to speak from the MCC. And the bylaw allow it, other than the planning committee that ran up through 2006, if I believe I have it correctly, when the CDRC got going. That has never happened that I know of with the MCC. But yes, the bylaws do allow for that to be, for the MCC to authorize a committee to meet and speak for the MCC. In practice, I suspect that the speaking for the MCC part would only be authorized after the committee had reported to the council as a whole. I would certainly recommend that. But yes, it is allowed. And I thought you had a third item in there, Greg, which I've completely lost.
That's enough. I've forgotten it too. Dan's waiting.
Okay, Dan.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. No, first of all, yeah, we need to be really accurate, Dave. It's not 2 or more. It's more than 3. 3 members of the council can talk together and be on a committee.
So Dan, I'm being very, very clear here. You can have 3 on committee, and then they don't have to fall under Brown Act rules unless it's a standing committee. Even if it's only 3, and you have a member of the public officially on that committee, 1 or more, then it also falls under the Brown Act, and you have to have minutes, agendas, et cetera.
Yes, but earlier you said 2 or more.
I'm sorry.
3. It's more than 3.
I would give an example, but I guess I was causing confusion in the way I was saying it.
Okay, and I don't really have any. I don't really have any problems with everything else you said. It's basic. Other than, I think, yes, there's overhead and operating, setting up a committee with all the minutes and everything and agenda, all that stuff. Yes, it is overhead. But if there were an issue that was, that warranted a committee, and 3 people wanted to be on the committee, and wanted to take on that overhead, then there shouldn't be a problem. I think I heard you say earlier that it was deliberate. There was no no committees in the past several years. And I think it's just because there hasn't been an issue, big enough really to take that step. But the council always has the privilege to take that step.
I agree, but there is also the privilege to argue against it. What I'm saying is that several members over the years with a lot of experience have consistently argued against it and instead suggested ad hoc committees that do not include members of the public and that are short-term, objective-oriented in order to avoid all the overhead and the bureaucracy, because one sees this all the time. Is once something gets established, it tends to just keep running.
Yeah, well, everything has its place, if an ad hoc committee can function well, then yes, it's take the low-hanging fruit. That's all for now.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to go on to a different policy item, which is also related to the Brown Act, which is getting agenda materials posted 72 hours prior to the meeting. We have been getting worse and worse about this, including me. I'm not excluding me by any means on this. So it is highly desirable that meeting materials, letters, presentations, whatever, be posted at least 3 days prior to the meeting. Gives all the members a chance to look at them, because not everybody has a chance to look at them at the last minute. And it gives the members of the public a chance to look at them and decide whether they want to be at the meeting. And that's why the Brown Act suggests that. It does not absolutely require it, except in some very specific cases, but it is strongly suggested. And as we have been falling away from that, I wanted to remind people that it's one of those policies that's there for a good reason. It's beneficial to the council. It reduces discussion if people have a chance to read it thoroughly and get their questions in mind. And again, it's important that the audience and the community and the press and anywhere else get a chance to look at them. And that we've also had that policy for a long time. Any questions about that, public or council? I know it's sort of arguing against motherhood and apple pie unless you're the one trying to get it done. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to cover is not a Brown Act item, although it touches on the previous item and it touches on the Brown Act. And we've had some advice on this from county counsel's office at the retreat and other times, which is making major changes to letters or other items during council meetings. And we all know how ugly it is to try and edit a letter on the fly. If it's more than, trivial things. So, and it does end up with something the community hadn't had a chance to see sometimes. It's some really major change. So we have, again, had this as, I believe it's an unwritten policy. I don't think it's written anywhere, that we try not to make major edits during a meeting, that if there are major changes required, we send it back to the group that wrote it and then bring it to the next meeting. Or if there's a time requirement, we declare a special meeting to cover it. And that has been the stumbling block. And to pick a very specific example without picking on the people who did it was the letter on the dog, off-leash dog pilot, where we had a substitute letter at the last minute, and then we did further on then letters. And we did that. I and others defended doing that. I believe I was one of the ones who defended doing it because the Planning Commission or the deadline was coming up. And we didn't want to have a special meeting. So this is a tough one, but part of being on the council, occasionally you do have to have special meetings. So I think, especially given some of the public fallout and some of the council unhappiness with what happened, I strongly suggest that the next time this happens, that we say, we're just not doing it in the meeting. We authorize 2 or 3 people to go out and write the letter, and we have the special meeting. So this one I expect to provoke more discussion. Claire, you want to call people?
We can't hear you, Claire. You're on mute.
I keep getting kicked off, so stay alert, Greg, please. Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, okay, so I understand, I agree with you that editing a letter in the meeting is not always easy. Maybe we could work ways around that to make it a little easier, but I'm kind of hearing you say that there should be no editing of a letter at a meeting at all, which I disagree. It's case by case basis. I think, if it works to have the letter, brought back, fine. I mean, whatever is the easiest. Sometimes, we just need to make a motion, but, and the council, it's the council that is signing on to this letter. So we all want, I think we all would like to shoot to have consensus, and in order to have consensus, that we need to be all comfortable with the language in the letter. So I don't see anywhere around this, Dave. I don't see any way around just kind of muscling through it. And I think we all can take steps to try to minimize the difficulty through that process. But it's case by case basis, whatever's easiest. If it's easier to edit it, also you got to remember the public's, the community's opinion too. That's our opportunity to hear from the community on this. On their part, they are a part of it. So I don't really agree with what you're putting forward here as far as discouraging any editing at all. I think we should just try to move forward with practices to do the editing that works. And actually, I'm not completely against having 2 letters. Yes, it probably should be 72 hours, although there has been some variances on that in the past. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay, I want to be clear. I am not saying no editing. I'm not even saying only grammatical and spelling editing. Light editing, I think, can work.
Well, it's all subjective, right?
Absolutely, it's subjective. No question about it. And that's why every time it happens, somebody at some point has to say, in my opinion, hey, this is getting to be too much. It's too confusing. It's too big a change. We should send it back and vote on it again later. Now, as an example of the way I think it could be done, I won't say should, was actually the next item on our agenda, the lead letter, where it was brought forward at our last meeting was discussion about the letter. There were suggestions on what might be changed in the letter. And it was postponed, and it was brought back at the next meeting. That was a little less urgent topic than some, which made it perhaps easier, except for the person doing the writing. But that's a case where the public does get the feedback, council members get the feedback, and then it gets modified and brought back. So that is one of the alternative approaches when time allows.
Okay. Greg.
So I think we're in agreement that minor editing makes sense. If I were to try to craft a guideline, I would say, if you have conflicting proposals, such as the dog letters were, they both have to be available 72 hours before, right? Otherwise, you're going to be headed toward a disagreement in the meeting, and that will trigger a special meeting. And I know special meetings are not popular, but in the case of the dog thing, I got a lot of flack, not just for the decision change, but for the fact that the community felt they were blindsided and didn't have a chance to comment. And so a special meeting, as I understand it, involves Zoom and the whole bit, and the community would be on short notice, but they would have a chance to chime in. So if I were to try and refine the guideline, I would say conflicting materials, if they can't be resolved, it can't be presented before 72 hours before the meeting, then you're headed toward a special meeting unless all of a sudden the council comes to an agreement. If you do have an agreement that's that conflicting, then you're going to have a special meeting. So that's what I would say.
I would agree. And if in fact there are 2 or even 4 letters for the agenda item, and they're all available 72 hours ahead, and the vote becomes which of the 4 to adopt, then I think that is not good, but it's okay, as long as you're not doing major editing and merging of the 4 letters at the meeting. So yeah, that is the other alternative. But it's hard for again, if people are posting letters 2 days before the meeting and somebody goes, oh my God, this isn't what I want, and then they have to figure out what they want to write, they write it, it's really hard. So again, this is all argues for getting things posted earlier rather than later. And we can post letters before the final agenda. We can do a draft agenda, post a draft agenda, if we think it's a controversial subject, have multiple opinions on. That is a feasible approach. I think I can only remember that happening once in all the time I've been on the council, and I can't pinpoint the issue, but I seem to remember it happening.
Mm-hmm. I've been trying to get the agenda out on Saturdays, which is 96 hours ahead of time. But I haven't always done that. But your point about putting up a draft agenda with tentative letters even before that is a great idea. I'd rather have them up too soon than too late.
Yeah. It is hard on council members' time. And without staff, we're in a much worse position than a lot of bodies are. And that's part of what leads to this. On the other hand, it does give us more flexibility.
Okay, stuff to think about.
Does any of that spark anything else from anybody in the public or the council before we drop it? Because I know that was a major topic of discussion after the last time that happened.
I'm glad we're talking about the about there's been an awful reaction to it. And we do need to have a plan as to what we would do if it happened again. And I think we have at least a better sense that now. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
We lost a little bit of that, but I think the sense came through clear.
Okay. Okay. If what they need to say, I think we'll move into the last item on the agenda, which is, as Dave said, hopefully you can hear me, Can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Yes, okay.
Oh, we just lost her. So the next item on the agenda is the lead letter. I move that we adopt the lead letter as written. Do we have a second?
I think we ought to let Michelle at least present it first.
I just want to get the discussion started with a motion on the table.
I will second the motion.
All right, now I think we turn it over to Michelle to present her thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I think those of you guys who have been following along at every meeting will get a little bit bored of me giving background since this is kind of the third time I've shared, but I will make it quick. It's primarily because we have a few new people at tonight's meeting, and I want to make sure that everyone kind of understands how we got here and where we're, what we're asking for next. Okay, so I'll just give the background on the issue. And also I haven't shared this presentation. All of these facts are similar facts that I've stated or I presented at the previous meeting back in February, but I'll make sure that I share this on the website and it has links to everything. But right now, so emissions from the 190,000 general aviation airplanes that currently operate on leaded fuel account for about 70% of lead entering the atmosphere. It used to be that lead was coming in from all different sources. We had automobiles, regular cars using fuel that contained lead. There was lead paint. There are still some issues with lead in products and toys, but in terms of the lead that goes into the atmosphere, the main issue that's remaining is airplane gasoline. So the fuel that these kind of small single engine airplanes, that the kind that we see quite often here at the Half Moon Bay Airport are using, contains lead. Just incidentally, jet fuel does not contain lead, so it's not an issue with any of the jetliners. So it's really just the small airplanes that we're concerned with. And I think most people know this, but lead is a toxicant. It affects multiple body systems, and it's particularly harmful to young children. Part of this is because kids are more prone to putting their hands in their mouth after touching lead, or they're more likely to ingest lead, and that makes its way into their blood. But recent studies have shown that it also affects adults as well. So no one wants lead in their body. For kids, it can cause neurological conditions, learning disabilities. It's a real problem. Why this came up for me, or what at least first got my attention about it, is that in 2021, Santa Clara did a study of children living close to the Reed-Hillview Airport. And what they found, they studied 17,000 samples of blood tests from children, and kids who lived closest to the airport had higher levels of lead in their blood than kids who lived farther away. They also accounted for any lead from other sources. So as we know, older homes tend to have lead paint. That was all accounted for in the study. And so the results were that the closer kids lived to the airport, and especially those kids that lived downwind from the way that the planes were taking off and landing, were the ones that had higher lead levels. So what this pretty much proved is that the lead in the children's blood was coming from the emissions from these airplanes. So as a result of those findings, Santa Clara County banned leaded aviation fuel at the airports that it owns or that it runs in the county. So Reed-Hillview and then San Martin Airport now no longer have leaded fuel available for sale. Going on to the next one more slide of background. So the Santa Clara County, together with a couple of nonprofits, actually petitioned the EPA, and the EPA is planning to take steps to eventually ban leaded aviation fuel. The current estimate is that would happen by the year 2030. There are many steps to get there, so the EPA has to issue an endangerment finding. They plan to have a proposed finding this year and then finalize that next year. So if all goes to plan, best case scenario, lead could be completely banned in aviation fuel by 2030. So 8 years from now. Hopefully that happens on time. I know sometimes things can move a little bit slower when we're talking about the federal government. Just a little context more locally in San Mateo County, lead has been known to be an issue for many, many years. In fact, back in 2014, San Carlos Airport had some sensors to estimate the lead in air. And it was actually found that it was really high. And so the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors actually took action way back in 2014 to offer an unleaded fuel option at that airport. However, Half Moon Bay Airport still only has one tank of fuel. It contains lead. So every single plane that fills up at Half Moon Bay Airport is using leaded fuel. There's an option, it's not very widely available, but like I said, it actually is available at San Carlos Airport. It was the first airport in the state of California that offered unleaded fuel for aviation. And right now, 65% of airplanes can take that type of fuel with just a really small, what's called a one-time supplemental type certificate. So they basically can apply to get the certificate, and then they can fill their planes with unleaded fuel. Some planes still can't. I acknowledge that some of these older planes are not going to be able to easily switch over, but offering unleaded fuel at least as an option for now, and then moving completely to only have unleaded fuel, it's something that's going to have to happen anyway by the federal government. So you'll see in our letter what we're asking for is to take steps to make that happen sooner. So this is something we've been talking about since February. We approved a letter and sent it to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors requesting 4 things. We asked for an analysis of lead levels in children. So basically a similar study to what was done in Santa Clara County for our population here. We asked for soil testing of the ground surrounding the airport. As we know, there are a lot of agricultural fields where food is grown, both on airport property and really near it, across Highway 1 from the airport. And so we asked for soil testing. We also asked for water testing of the wells. So there are 3 wells, I think 2 currently in use at the airport where MWSD is supplying drinking water. And then we asked to offer for the airport to offer an unleaded fuel option. And we got a response in April. Basically, the county didn't do any of the testing we asked. They did offer an alternative type of testing, which is stormwater testing, which is, definitely good to do. It actually came back with no lead in the stormwater, but that doesn't mean that lead is not in the soil just because it didn't drain down to the output near the ocean. Lead is actually very tightly bound into the soil, and so it without major disturbance, it doesn't really move very easily. And then also, if you're looking at just this very small amount of water that makes its way down to the stormwater drains, it's very unlikely that we would actually see the results of the lead coming all the way there. I mean, if we did, we'd definitely know there's an issue, but just because that came back with no lead in it doesn't mean that lead is not present in the soil. On May 6th, Gretchen Kelly, who's the airport manager, stated that they would actually be requesting Measure K funding to install an unleaded aviation fuel tank at the airport, which is great. Currently, that's proposed to be presented to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors in September during the next budget process. So part of what we're asking is to actually make that happen sooner to expedite that. And then last MCC meeting on May 25th, we reviewed a draft letter, but we've pulled it from consideration because there were some concerns by members of the council. So I worked with Claire and with Jill to write a modified letter I'm not saying that both of them supported it. Jill and I went back and forth on some things. I don't know if she would support this letter. It doesn't look like she's here, but I took her feedback into consideration. I also worked with Claire to write this letter, which is what we're going to review tonight. So main things that we're requesting now are swifter action, like I mentioned, on the installation of an unleaded fuel tank, an assessment of the agricultural practices at the airport. So without explicitly asking for lead soil testing, one thing Claire and I talked about is that we could potentially ask for just a closer assessment of what would be needed to really understand whether there is lead getting into the not just in the soil, but getting into the plants that are being grown. You know, I think one of the things on my mind is like, you know, soil testing would be good, but there people we've talked about in the past, whether even if there is lead in the soil, is that going to make its way into the plants? You know, that's a really big unknown. It could actually get into the plants from one of two ways. It could be sucked up from the soil, but some findings that we've, you know, just found with our internet research have said that maybe that's unlikely for the type of plants that are grown at the airport. But there's also a chance that this lead is being deposited. Is 333 pounds of lead a year is the estimate of what's being deposited on the plants. And just for reference, for a child to have an elevated level of lead in their blood, it's about 1/1,000,000th of a pound that needs to make their way into their blood for them to have those elevated levels. So a very, very minute amount that gets on plants or on soil and makes its way into the human body is quite concerning. Anyway, the fourth thing that we're asking for is that the county chart a path to stop the sale of leaded fuel prior to when the federal ban goes into effect. So my feeling is that 2030 is too long to wait. We don't want 8 more years of people, you know, inhaling lead that's being sprayed out as these planes take off and land. And I think the county needs to move faster. So here's a draft letter that's been posted on the website since Monday evening. I won't read through it all here, but I'll just keep it up and then I'll have Claire go through the process. And I guess, go ahead, Claire.
You're muted, Claire. Can't unmute.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and call on people to comment, Michelle?
Yeah, did you want to do clarifying questions and then go to public?
That's fine. I can do. That's fine. I can do that. So we'll turn to the public first. We do have a member of the public who asked. Well, they didn't ask, but they sent in their comments on this in writing, and this was. Do you have the name there, Michelle?
Abby?
Yeah.
Abby Foster.
Yes, and Abby says she is a teacher in primary grades on local school, and she has seen kids that lived in Moss Beach who were doing very poorly, who ended up having lead toxicity. She didn't necessarily tie that to this current discussion, but she's concerned about the issue. So I'll go now to Harold.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for all your work, General, to the council and all the hours you put in here. So my comment on the letter is, I think, because you have, and I actually send an email to the county and the Board of Supervisors regarding the farming on the airport, and you have a line in here, but the header is really all framed around leaded fuel and the concern that comes with it. And I wonder if you could expand it, because the farming on the airport and the 5 things that I laid out in my letter, so military usage, drag racing for 12 years, live fire fighting exercise with highly toxic firefighting foam with forever chemicals and PFAS, Dream Machines, 29 events. The last one, 2019, was 2,000 cars, planes, engines on the site, on the airport site. And then, of course, all the flight activity with leaded fuel. So there's one farmer, it's not farmers, there's one farmer, and he actually advertises that he farms on the airport field. So it's known. He delivers local restaurants. I know at least 3 restaurants. He also delivers, I know, 2 farmers markets, local farmer markets. So we eat that stuff. And the response from the airport basically to say, well, this has been done since 95, it's true, but it has been done at the north and the southern portion of the airport, of the landing strip. But now it's all over the place, including areas where we know there was significant activity that might create all kinds of chemicals that basically sit in the soil. So I wonder if the letter can be just from lead, which is a huge concern, to say, well, the farming, and I copied you in the letter with all the chemicals that are potentially in the ground. And, the stormwater testings was, I know the area, so there's a ditch that runs between Highway 1 and the outside of the airport field. I don't know if that's what they mean, but that's clearly not the runoff from the airport field. And then nearby Airport Boulevard, I think there's also a small ditch. So I'm not sure when they test stormwater really how meaningful that is. The same when you test wells. I mean, the wells, they go down, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 feet. So what's in the water down there versus what's up in the soil? So this is a major concern. The response from the county to basically tell us we have lead in our homes, therefore we shouldn't test it because we have lead anyway around us. I mean, that's not a very good response. And then to also say the families who are concerned should go to their own healthcare provider. I mean, that's a nice way to bypass any larger study. Because if they found lead in your children, then it resides, it's PHI information with the healthcare provider, but it's not publicly available. So what Santa Clara did is they did a study and they have data from a large population, and San Mateo County is avoiding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Karen Wang.
Hi, my name is Karen Wang, and I live in Montera, and my kids are often in Moss Beach and El Granada, and I'm concerned about leaded aviation gas. I think that the current letter is correct. Like, we know that lead is being emitted. And if we've seen, similar findings in other places, there's no reason to think that it would be any different here. Of course, there's some question of how far dispersed it is because of wind and things, but it is being deposited in our community. I think that the one thing I also wanted to mention was, how about the farm workers on these farms? Sure, if lead is being deposited in these fields and maybe there's limited plant uptake into the food, how about the farm workers who are digging around in the soil and that kind of disturbs things and then they're breathing it in? I think that's another equity piece of this that I think is really important, that they are being potentially exposed occupationally. And I think that if the county is, renting the land to farmers, that they do have some responsibility at least to investigate. Testing soil for lead is very cheap. You can get kits for it everywhere. So I really think that unless they test, I really don't think there's an excuse. That's it. Thank you for your work on this. And I, really encourage you guys to respond to the county for our children. And you're right, we can't wait another 8 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle and team, for this letter. It's pretty cool. I'm wondering, I thought I saw on your presentation, I don't have a copy of it, I thought you said that San Mateo County required unleaded fuel at the San Carlos airport. Is that right?
Yes, since 2014.
So I'm just sort of curious how San Carlos got included into that cool thing, but Half Moon Bay was left out. Like, why didn't they require it at both airports in San Mateo County rather than just one? So it seems like something was missed there. And that may be worth investigating, or maybe including something about that in your letter. Actually, regarding modifying letters on your previous subject, I think that I have opinion there that is, I like it when you guys change letters up a lot, and I think it's a good thing that you change letters up a lot, because it brings out the best of everybody, and you're elected members to represent us, and so you're the passionate folks that are really out there doing the work. And so I think it's good when you all have your opinions and want to stick your opinions in the letter. I think that's very good. I mean, I've seen changes made to letters. I didn't like them, but in the end, I realized that the letters are always way better when you've all had a shot at hacking away at it. And so I wouldn't feel bad or concerned about chopping up letters and putting in there stuff you see fit. If it's a whole lot and you think you're going to upset the community, you can always bring it back if you have time. But those are my thoughts. I wanted to say on this one, if this letter doesn't have to go out right away, I would like you to maybe connect with Harold. It sounds like you haven't connected with Harold yet to try to get his thoughts into your letter, and maybe Karen's thoughts as well to get that into the letter. Those are all very good thoughts, which maybe should go into the letter, or at least some of them should. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I have things to say, but I'll wait till the council talks. Lena.
Yeah, thanks. Just two things. One, well, first I just want to say I'm really excited. This is an item. I've been fun working with you on it. I think it's really important. I did read most of the Reed Hillview study. And one thing that I think is kind of relevant for people to know is that the amount of data points that they just had on hand, they didn't go out and take blood samples, but for the blood testing, for people who still want that, they had 17,000 blood level samples available. We don't have that. So just statistically speaking, that's not really something that when Michelle and I talked, it's just not really something we could get anything statistically significant from. So that's kind of why I think this letter doesn't really go into that for people who are still hoping to see blood level testing. But if people want to, let our office know that there's been certain cases of it, we definitely want to know that. The second thing I wanted to say is I shared this letter, the drafted letter, with the supervisor, and he let me know to let y'all know that he would be happy to support it. I'm sure amended as well, as long as those amendments aren't massively significant. But at this point, he's happy to advocate for the contents of this letter. Thanks.
Thank you. Sid.
Thank you. I kind of share Harold's view that, maybe they gave us the brush off with some of their remarks in past concern when we've aired our concerns, and they kind of let the coast side, sit like we always do. Lack of equity, they could have just gone ahead and passed it with San Carlos right from the get-go, but no, they waited for us to complain separately. So one of my environmental concerns, not only lead, but the airport restaurant is on septic, and that septic is going into the aquifer. The main aquifer for the coast side is at the airport. So if you're going to write anything up as far as environmental things, yes, the edible crops are all being grown on the fields at the airport, but they are also polluting the groundwater by having it on septic tank and not on sewer. So that's something I would like you to include. You probably won't, but definitely something worth bringing up to them. Why should they give themselves a pass to not connect with the sewer, especially when it's, a public airport that they promote all the time from San Carlos? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lauren.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. I'm just calling to express my gratitude for the letter, and I'm really appreciative that you guys are sending this. And as a mother of 2 young children, this is kind of a very concerning area for me, and knowing that they kind of just brushed us off is also very concerning. But I just wanted to call and say my support for the letter, and I think action needs to be taken now, not 5 to 10 years from now. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to comment on this? If not, I'll close the public comment and move to the council. As I say, I have things to say, but I'm going to wait because I'm the chair. I'll start with Dan.
Yes. Thanks, Michelle, for taking this on. In general, I agree with the issue 100%, that unleaded fuel should be available. As it's been said in the past, there's the exception with the historic planes. And I thought that I heard you say that you understood that, or that you were okay with that. I do have to listen. I am not a scientist, but I do understand how bureaucracy moves, and as far as the agricultural issue. So, we live in an agricultural area. I like that we live in an agricultural area. I like to see these fields worked. I like to see what I big high quality food, much higher quality food than these big ag operations elsewhere, which feeds some of the larger supermarkets. I guess I want to raise concern. I think that we should tread carefully, not to hurt our agriculture. Sorry, dropped my pen. Yeah, so I'm not a scientist, but I think that there needs to be kind of a study. There's benefits from good quality agriculture operations versus these big ag operations that are constantly driving their farm equipment through the fields, spraying this and that, and all this excessive. I think that these operations are very minimal. I don't know if they're organic, but very, very minimal farm equipment moving through the fields. I think they do a good job, and I don't want to hurt them. And I think that there's a chance that pushing this issue on the agriculture and the airport fields, that we could eventually hurt them, and not before we truly know all of the pros and cons to weigh whether we really want to take that attack. Or when I say attack, I mean that there's unintended consequences through bureaucracy and just I don't know how they're probably not making much of a profit. They're just probably barely getting by. Of course, I want to know if there's any real danger, but I think that we need to walk here kind of lightly. Certainly, we should know if there is a study done, it should be compared with other areas as well, and a very scientific study, as far as because we don't know how long lead has been there, whether or not it's, how the human body, I think it is clearly determined that any lead in the human body is bad, and I'll accept that. But there's parts per million and all that stuff. There's FDA acceptable levels, and I think we're kind of walking into an area that honestly I think we should focus just on asking them, step one, to provide unleaded fuel. And I think I made my point.
Yeah, I think I'm going to respond. Is that okay?
You're going to respond to me?
May I? I was going to wait. But I think I'd like to. We talked about this a little bit. I agree with you basically that I don't want us to come in because we're not agricultural as experts. And I don't want to come in threatening a farmer's livelihood or even looking like that. We talked about using UC Extension and maybe RCD, who have a history of working with what makes sense in farming, and asking them to somehow issue an opinion, take a look at the situation and issue an opinion on good farming practices. And if we have anything to worry about or not, rather than us going in there and saying, here's what needs to be done. So we have kind of walked that back to somewhere close to where you are.
Yeah, and I'm all for let's take action to request that they offer unleaded fuel.
Definitely. Okay. I'm going to move to Greg.
So I want to divide this into two parts. I think we need to get something done. I think we should accept the letter. I understand that the community wants to broaden it, but the perfect is the enemy of the good. I want to get this out. I don't think, it violates any process problems. The second thing I want to comment on is Sid's claim about the water supply. And of course, I can only rely on what I'm told by Montero Water and Sanitary District, but it goes back almost a decade that I've been here. 3 wells at the airport, one's not been used for years. The other 2 in the airport are only used when there's storms up in the mountain that roil the water in the aquifers on the hills. So only when that water is so turbulent that it hasn't had time to settle and be used. So the airport is not the main source of water for the MWSD community. And of course, GCSD gets its water from Half Moon Bay. The thing that I want to punctuate is the statistics Michelle showed, which are probably out of date, that our lead compared to SFO's lead level. And I don't know, with the increased traffic we've experienced with these flight schools, which has died down, where we stand now. So I think we may still have a problem. I think that there was a community member here who said there's no reason to think things are any better here than they were at Reed Hillview. One question is sensors. Why not us? Why don't we have a lead air sensor? Another thing is Harold raised all the other pollutants. What about expanding beyond lead to the other pollutants? And then it was raised about the farm workers as well as the children and the residents, et cetera. So I think we should approve this letter and take under consideration whether there's a bigger scope for separate study, for confirmation. Now, I was not allowed to work with the subgroup that was working on this. I was on vacation and the Brown Act prohibited me from communicating with them. But I asked some friends of mine who retired from the EPA what to do. And they said the Regional Water Quality Control Board and something I didn't even know existed called the California Department of Toxic Substances Control. So I wrote them. And I want to know what options they recommend for lead testing. I would like to hear that we get some oversight because was very underwhelmed by the county's response. I don't recall hearing from the Director of Public Health about this. We got a letter from the airport manager. I found it kind of strange. It's almost like they didn't want to know there was a problem. Maybe there isn't a problem. But I would like to see some oversight by a professional organization that the testing that the county's done was sufficient in scope. I even wondered, given all the extra pollutants that Harold's raised, whether the tests done by Montero Water and Sanitary District are sufficient. I don't know. They are pretty clear they don't think there's any lead in the airport wells, but what about all the other stuff? I don't know. And then I would also like to know what other options there are for tracking other pollutants. But I don't want to hold this letter up for any of that. So I'm in favor of doing the letter. I think the letter is constrained the way that Claire and Dan want, but I don't think we can sleep on this issue until we have independent oversight of the quality of the testing that's been done. And that's where I have hopes that the California Department of Toxic Substances Control or the Regional Water Quality Control Board or somebody else will come in and assure us. Thanks.
Okay. Michelle and Dave, neither of you had anything. Do you want to?
I would like to, but Dave can go first.
No, we'll point out to Claire that we moved in second that the letter be approved as is while you were off the air. All I wanted to say was I really appreciate the running that went into this. I know it was painful. Thanks a lot. I'm quite happy with the result.
So I'd like
Nope.
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment.
I think we should let Michelle do her comments first, Jam.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone, all the members of the public and the council for their points that they brought up. I recognize all of these points. I agree with Greg, though, in that I think this is kind of opening up a dialogue. We had sent that first letter back in February, and we got what I deem to be a very dismissive response from the county. So I'm so happy to hear that the supervisor is now in agreement or in support of what we're asking for in our letter. And so I do not think we should delay any longer in sending it because this just opens up a dialogue. We're not very specific in what we're asking, especially with regard to the farming, the area that's being farmed. I totally hear Harold's points about the additional pollutants. That concerns me as well. I hear your point, Dan. I don't want to hurt the farmers either. But, that's what I guess I feel the worst about is that if our action ends up, hurting someone, I definitely don't want that. But the thing that you have to keep in mind is that there is a potential that everyone who's consuming the food that's grown is being hurt. Or some people, I'm sure a lot of different people are consuming that food. And I certainly don't want anyone to be hurt by that. And so I feel like we need to take action and, open up this dialogue and start to work with the county. I don't have the answer as to what type of testing is going to give us confidence that either there's no issue or if there is an issue, that would involve several steps in terms of remedying the issue. But what I do know is that something needs to be done. We need to, if we're going to continue to allow farming on that land, we need to know that it's safe. And I don't think it would be fair to anyone to continue to let farming go on, to not say anything, and to potentially being hurting people as a result. So, I think I covered all the points I want to make. Thank you, Greg, for looking up those additional departments, government entities that might help with this. I think those are all possibilities for us to work with in the future to continue to investigate this issue and then move to eliminate leaded fuel so it's no longer an issue for the future.
I'd like to make a couple of comments too before we leave this, and I keep losing my connection, so it might happen again. I think this is a very complicated situation. I don't think any of us even begin to know what should be done. I am very hesitant to ask for specific things to happen if we might be wrong about those things, what's actually needed. I'm much more likely to want to turn to some higher authority that can kind of guide the whole situation rather than having us guide the situation. And I think that's most of what the letter currently says is, we want somebody that knows something about agriculture to make it, to have a voice and opinion. We want people that, know what they're doing to do this. Our role is to encourage them and demand that they do it. I do think that we should go ahead and approve the letter. I think it's important that we're on record as saying that we think this is important and we want this dialogue to continue and we want action to happen. And if we keep delaying it, that's not the message that gets across. I hear the concern about the septic field and about the other various things that may have polluted that land over the years. The one thing that we can change right now is the leaded aviation gas. We can keep it from getting worse while we look at what else might be there. So while I understand what was brought up about other issues or other related issues, I don't think we need to deal with them right now as long as we can keep our foot in the door and keep focused on fixing things and improving things. Part of the reason why I think they allowed non-leaded gas at San Carlos, they still have leaded gas in San Carlos, they just have the option of unleaded, is because they have a much higher volume of sales than we do in Half Moon Bay. When they put in the unleaded tank in Half Moon Bay, it's going to be very lightly used because they don't sell much gas at all. So I think that it may not have just been, oh, we hate the coast. It may also have been an economic issue that made them make a tank there and not here. But they are now committed to doing it here. So I'm pleased about that. And Dan, I think you had an amendment you wanted to make.
Yeah, it's based on again, not taking steps that are possibly unnecessary. Again, I want to be very clear. I agree that we should have unleaded fuel available. But as far as the agricultural, I think that there is a potential for really undesired consequences.
Dan, rather than giving us your argument, could you just make the motion?
Well, I'm trying to, before it's voted down, I'm trying to do my best to give some context.
No, that's not how you make a motion. You should say what you want to change.
Well, we're doing discussion. I want to let people know why I'm putting.
I'd love it if you could make a motion.
Yeah, I'll get there. And so, yes, so that's what it's about. Unintended consequences. So I want to make a motion to strike, like everything else, just strike paragraph 4, take that out of the issue, we can deal with that separately. But I'm concerned that you're going to find really undesirable, potentially, unintended consequences through this. So,
okay. So the motion is
to strike paragraph 4.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. There is no second. I'd like to call for a vote on the letter. And Dan, could you call the roll, please?
Claire?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lynn's not here. Jill's still not here, correct? Myself, I would have voted yes if we struck that paragraph. So I have you forcing me to vote no on those conditions. So my vote is no. And then Dave?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, that ends the regular agenda. What about council activity? Anybody have anything to report? Nothing? Okay, what about future
There's a
agendas?
Warriors game to watch.
Well, actually, Len said he was gonna join us, but I think he
hate
got
to
caught
say
up with
it.
Warriors.
The Warriors lost. Hate to
Oh,
tell
did
you, I
they?
got a
Oh,
text.
no. I did have
Well, that's
council
bad.
activity I wanted to report.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it was actually mentioned earlier on in the meeting, but just I wanted to make everyone aware of the date and time of the RCD scope, the El Granada scoping project meeting. So that's the 28th of June from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And just regarding that project, I'm the representative on the MCC, and Sheena couldn't be here tonight, but the things that are happening right now is that the final draft of the recommendations that Panorama, the consultant, is putting together will be released to the partners. So myself, members from Fire, Parks, a couple community members that are on the official team, and we will have about a week to just review it as a partner team and provide feedback. And then the final draft will be, or the final report will be prepared. And that's what's going to be shared with the community and everyone on the 28th. And the other thing I wanted to report related to the RCD is that I actually have become an associate director on the board of the RCD. I became very familiar with them as part of the scoping project and my work on the MCC, and I applied and was approved at the last meeting to be an associate director.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Greg, did you have a question?
I wanted to know, can't you share the results that they share with you, with me and Len and the subcommittee on wildfire?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to. They want all the partners to have, so what I've been told is that they want all the partners to have a chance to review it and then to put together the final report before anything gets shared publicly. So they want to keep it to the small team, just, I guess, to give all the partners a chance to review it. We really don't want it to be shared publicly before the final draft or the final recommendation is prepared. So that's what I've been told by the people running the project.
Okay, well, just for the record, I have a problem with that. I don't view that Len and I are members of the public wandering around blabbing, but are people who could constructively contribute. But all right, I understand what.
Is there other council activity? Greg, you may have to chip in. Okay.
Chip in.
I mean, I thought I was no longer connected. Maybe I am. I was going to ask if you could take over. Okay, I am. Okay.
You're
Any other council activity? Okay, there's a list of potential agenda items at the bottom of this night's agenda. There are two major things coming up. One is the scoping project report, which I guess we won't know about until the end of the month. And the other is repair guidelines for Highway 1. And there is a meeting with Caltrans, which I will attend, and maybe other people in about a week and a half. So after that is released, then we'll probably be looking at that. Other ideas that I have down here include the seamless transportation project, the follow-up on schools, traffic safety, Midcoast history, Coast Pride, Coastside Aging Project. And there were a couple others that came in today. I don't remember what they were, but some community members suggested some things. And I think this is a chance if anybody else has anything else they want to talk about to make sure that we know about it.
Don't we have the RHNA housing element thing to comment on?
Not yet, but we will. I think when did they say they were going to have that out in mid-July or something?
No. I heard June, and I heard that they wanted to give their consolidated reply. I watched last week's last meeting yesterday, and they were saying they wanted to respond as a county by August. So that's what I heard.
Well, that meeting is fresher in your mind than it is in mine. You're no doubt right, but we haven't heard anything back from them. When we do, they'll probably want us to comment like immediately. So you're right.
Exactly. We won't have much time at all.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Should we entertain a meeting, a motion to adjourn?
I already moved that we adjourn.
Oh, I must have been off.
And I will second, Greg.
Dan, could you call the roll, please?
Claire?
Yes.
Who's next on the list here? Greg?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lynn's not here. Jill's not here. I say yes. Dave?
Yes.
Okay, Keller.
Okay. Thank you. It's earlier than we planned for once. Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recording stopped.